You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.
The Twilight Zone was an American television anthology series created by Rod Serling. The series contained several unrelated teleplays that dealt with drama, psychological horror, mystery suspense, and science fiction. The Twilight Zone was a popular and critical success for the television industry, and many science fiction fantasy tropes that we use today first came from that show. Critics hail The Twilight Zone as being one of the greatest television shows of all time, and the impact that the show had on storytelling and writing is clearly evident from movies that we have today. There are a couple of important things to note when looking at The Twilight Zone as a whole. The Twilight Zone was the first show that focused on the shocking twist ending that we see in a lot of films today. A lot of the episodes build up a tremendous amount of suspense that lead to a chilling, often shocking ending. Most horror and science fiction films today use this storytelling technique to enhance the experience in the theater. Movies like Saw, or more famously The Sixth Sense, rely on the twist ending to complete the story, which if done correctly, can leave the audience in awe and amazement. The Twilight Zone perfected the twist ending, and a lot of screenwriters and science fiction authors credit The Twilight Zone as being their inspiration for writing. The Twilight Zone was one of the first storytelling mediums that showcased elements of horror that we see today. For instance, there is an episode from Season 5 titled Living Doll, where the stepfather, played by Telly Savalas, starts to see and hear his daughter's doll come to life. It begins by saying macabre things to him, and then suddenly appearing all around the house in some paranormal fashion. You could say that this episode inspired the famous horror film Child's Play, in which a doll by satanic powers comes to life and kills its owners, the same way that Talking Tina does in the Twilight Zone episode. Another famous episode, titled Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, is about a nervous airplane passenger who begins to see a strange creature on the wing of a commercial jet. No one can see the creature but him, and a violent outburst occurs which causes the plane to land suddenly, while the main character, played by a young William Shatner, ends up losing his mind. This episode deals with psychological horror, which we see a lot in today's films. Darren Aronofsky, who directed the Academy Award-nominated film Black Swan, integrates many psychological horror aspects into the film, and the character of Nina is played just like the William Shatner character. She sees things that no one else can see, and you don't know if she is actually crazy or if some of it is real. Of course, the most important thing that the Twilight Zone gave us was the invention of science fiction in the medium of film. We had science fiction stories in the form of radio like War of the Worlds, and audiences were introduced to The Day the Earth Stood Still, but the Twilight Zone was the first in the visual medium that really showcased what science fiction can do for storytelling. The Twilight Zone showcased aliens, spaceships, new galaxies, and alternate timelines and worlds, which all led to the creation of a very popular 90s show, The X-Files. The X-Files was a weekly show that highlighted a monster of the week, while also weaving together a mythological universe about extraterrestrials. Another famous show a decade later was Fringe, which, like The X-Files, had a monster of the week kind of feel to it, while also incorporating a mythology into the universe. Both of these popular shows were inspired by some of the best Twilight Zone episodes of the series. Without a doubt, The Twilight Zone has worked its way into pop culture as being the defining show of science fiction. It created the twist ending that we see in films today, and it pushed the boundaries when it came to serialized storytelling for an anthology. The Twilight Zone, 60-something years later, is still relevant today, and a lot of the story elements hold up just as they were first introduced in the 1950s. Rod Serling created a television masterpiece with The Twilight Zone, and the impact of the show has made a huge wave when it comes to successful cinematic storytelling. Storytelling that can only be explained in the outer reaches of space and time. Only in The Twilight Zone.